right, I will read each one into the record. We, the jury, find the defendant, Darrell E. Brooks, guilty of first-degree intentional homicide as charged in count 1 of the information.
Finally tonight, justice in Waukesha as guilty verdicts were read. It took a long time because there were a lot of charges against Darrell Brooks in the Christmas Parade Massacre. Not a lot of coverage of this story if you're still watching the dinosaur media, and certainly if you're reading websites for like the Washington Post or the New York Times, but I know you're not doing that anymore. You're at Town Hall, and so you've been up to speed on this story thanks to the reporting of Julio Rosas, senior writer at Town Hall. He joins us now. Julio, obviously this meant a lot to you because you were there in Waukesha during the riots back in 2020, right?
In Kenosha, yeah.
Oh, excuse me.
And Wauwatosa. So
Kenosha.
there's a lot of shows.
All the West Wisconsin cities, yeah. You're right. But it was revealed here, as most people thought, that this was in some way a retaliation. Darrell Brooks was trying to take out his anger on as many innocent people as possible.
Yeah, this was a very interesting case in the fact that there was no doubt in his guilt, and just the fact that he was representing himself. He fired his defense team at the before the official started the trial, and yeah. So it was all him. And as the saying has gone is, you know, anyone who represents themselves has a fool for a client, and that was certainly the case when it came to Brooks's behavior.
I was reading your articles. I got to tell you, this was more than just being a fool. This is an evil. Obviously, he's an evil person, but to put his victims who survived his attack through this trauma again by staring them, and he was acting monstrous in the courtroom.
Yeah, I mean, again, because he knows he's guilty, but he was trying to come up with these very, I would say, avant-garde type ways of trying to act like it wasn't him. I mean, in his opening statement, he said that he wasn't going to contest any of the facts, but that there was two sides to every story. There was, only one side of the story had been told, and this wasn't an intentional act, and all this other stuff, which obviously was not the case at all. So again, he put up a defense. It just wasn't a very good one because
he was guilty.
Because he was obviously
and he was incapable.
I mean, there were literally pictures of him that they were able to get from during the attack where you see him behind the wheel because he had the windows rolled down. I mean, it wasn't even like a tinted up window where they could obstruct the view.
He drove through these elderly ladies, and there were grandmas who were dancing for this annual Christmas parade. He drove through this event trying to kill as many innocent people as possible. But does it surprise you that this sort of thing didn't get much coverage, considering usually mass murder is kind of a big thing on cable news?
No, I'm not surprised at all, for a couple of reasons. One, it wasn't by a gun, so there goes strike number one. But also, two, is that he was out on bail that was lowered to $1,000 for a previous hit and run, and that was one of the guilty verdicts that was read because he was found guilty on bail jumping from that previous incident. So
in other words, he was one of those sort of soft on crime results. All the people who were trying to defund the police or criminal justice reform, this is what it looks like.
Absolutely. And so, you know, obviously this was probably the most egregious case of that, but we're seeing it all over the country, whether we see it in New York City or we were seeing it up in San Francisco. That's why they got rid of their soft on crime DA, because people have had enough, and I think that that was definitely one of the reasons why it didn't get a lot of coverage. And it's not like it wasn't newsworthy.
No, it was a huge story.
Because of just even on his behavior, it was newsworthy enough.
Allow me to speculate, though. And again, I hate doing this, but you got to because of the media world we live in and the political world we live in. If an angry white man drove a car into a predominantly black parade, killing as many black paraders as he possibly could, I think that would have gotten some attention. I think there's a racial component to this, too.
I mean, it's not exactly the same, but the Ahmaud Arbery case, I mean, that was, two white men who were guilty of doing a vigilante justice type thing. That got way more coverage. And again, because their guilt wasn't in doubt, so they can't say, well, we knew that Brooks was guilty. It's like, well, we also knew that these people were also involved in that case. But that got a lot more coverage because, again, the narrative that the media wants to perpetuate definitely fit that, and not this case in Waukesha.
Total number of charges? How many?
76.
And he was 76. Guilty on all counts?
Every single one. From
death penalty in Wisconsin?
Unfortunately, they do not have death penalty in Wisconsin, so the most that he's going to get is going to be life in prison without parole.
Thanks for joining us. Thanks for covering this, by the way, because you were kind of alone in it. Not completely alone, but one of the few covering it as detail-oriented as you did. So thanks for all that. And continue to watch what Julio Rosas does at Town Hall on a regular basis. You know him, he always shows up whenever there's a riot or at the border. Yet trouble follows you everywhere, Julio. That's it for tonight. We'll see you tomorrow. In the meantime, I'll see you on the radio.